Hey, Baby J here with the Fligh podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and like this episode. Share with any other cannabis enthusiasts that would like to dial in on the session, as we're going to be breaking it down on many different topics around the cannabis industry. See you soon.
The thing about cannabis is it encompasses all of it. Science, it's recreational, it's medicinal, it's a community. So there's a ton of different things that we can talk about. I think, at the end of the day, when we're talking about this podcast, really what we're going to be focusing on is the industry as a whole, but more specifically, we're going to take topics that we've seen throughout the industry, seen throughout history of cannabis, and how they apply to Mississippi and the cannabis market here in Mississippi, and the new and evolving market that we have in Mississippi.
And also I want to be able to take a chance to focus on, just the team that is here on site, that we have building the brands, backing the brands, supporting the brands with, quality products, best practices, expert leadership, and, just a lot of the innovation leaders that, are within the four walls and confines of this building that really make a big impact, not just what we do here, but what we do for the, Mississippi cannabis industry, as well as hopefully down the road, nationally for the cannabis industry. And so, this is super exciting. So our first podcast, Fligh. Just in terms of introductions, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Southern Crop, and I'm not sure if we want to do like intros of.
Yeah, give your breakdown. Give a breakdown of your experience. Definitely give a brief overview.
Just terms of cannabis background, I come from a lot of West Coast operations. I put up dispensaries in Arizona, California, also worked on brand expansion and portfolio expansion for multi-state operating companies throughout, 9 different states nationally. So it's been quite the ride. I've done everything from, working in cultivation and production for consumer packaged goods all the way to, just very elevated dispensary retail experiences. And so that's been my forte these last 3 to 4 years, is focusing on, direct to consumer, also wholesale operations, and then just, scaling up. I come from working in, massive greenhouse operations and indoor operations. So it's a testament to this team, because it's one thing to be able to grow cannabis, as a college student or as a fan, in a grow or in a small room of your house. But it's another thing to take that expertise and scale it to something that can cover consumers across an entire state, whether it's Mississippi or, California, you name it. It's a very skilled craft that takes, a bunch of, industry knowledge, as well as just, the willingness to always learn and to always, refine your own skill set over time. So it's, as much as everyone's an expert in this building, we're all just students too at the same time.
I'm just a pothead. No, I've been smoking pot for a good while, I would say. But in terms of cannabis experience, this is really where I'm starting. So that's why I report into him and try to learn as much as possible from the guys behind you and the guys that work in this building, and people have done it before. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just an enthusiast trying to learn as much as possible. So I've just been blessed to be part of the ride.
Yeah, been a fun time.
Like I said earlier, I've been in cannabis, or using cannabis, for a while now, and this is definitely a lot different than what you've seen in the Southeast in terms of the black market. This is completely different. One of the things was that I initially was surprised about was the pricing. Obviously, we've seen in terms of the market now, but I think that's one of the biggest struggles for the legal market, is competing with the black markets on pricing, as well as accessibility and knowledge. There's consumers still here in the state that don't even realize this is legal. And then when we look at it on a broader spectrum, just in the Southeast in general, cannabis is still not something that is widely accepted. I have plenty of people that I'm very close with that still don't understand why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think that cannabis is a wonderful plant. It's a natural occurring plant, and it can help clear up a lot of people in medicinal need. For example, I know there's plenty of cancer patients here in the state that are benefiting from cannabis. And it breaks my heart in other states that they can't have access to that.
Yep. And just to touch on Joe, I mean, it's, coming from West Coast cannabis, into Mississippi and the South, it's, from an outsider's perspective, it's, you're coming into the Bible Belt, essentially, states that have been known to be vehemently against, not just cannabis, but, like even alcohol, substance abuse, any sort of, outside substances that, people, it's kind of taboo. And so it was interesting coming into the state where I thought it was going to be very, still, softly spoken about, people not wanting to come into the dispensary or, unwilling to get their medical card. And, for the most part, I think my perspective on that's actually kind of changed. I feel like the state's been ready for quite some time for, medical cannabis to come in and start, to Joe's point, becoming accessible, not just from the weed dealer on the corner type deal, but, professionals coming into the space to provide pharmaceutical grade cannabis to help them with, whether it's cancer, whether it's, just treating, back pain is like always some of the big ones, or treating anxiety. Even that's not a qualifying statement or a qualifying condition yet, but it's something that, you hear often in not just Mississippi, but you hear that, hey, it's great for my anxiety. It's great for my migraines. It's great for, just inflammation, with my arthritis. So it's something that the state definitely needs, given where cannabis is at nationally, and that have so many states have gone medical and even gone recreational. And a lot of the neighboring states, you got Missouri, you got Oklahoma, Arkansas,
Alabama's passed their program.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's
Louisiana has a program.
You've reached a point where Mississippi, I think, has been kind of like, teetering and, finally moving that needle. And now we're here.
Yeah. Especially when you look at, the majority of the population voted for this to become legalized. Yep. Not to say the majority of the population is a patient right now, yep, but I think there's an understood at this level. I think that we've gotten so far along with cannabis as a whole, as a country, is that people can sit here and vote to say yes on something that they may not participate in. They understand it's not going to affect them, so they're comfortable with it being part of the state in which they live in, which is definitely eye-opening. But now back to just from a consumer standpoint, because I am a medical card holder here in the state, just wanted to preface that. But as a medical card holder here in the state, I think, a lot of my friends, when I came into this, they all were asking, Joe, you think you're going to smoke more cannabis? Like, you think you're going to smoke more? Because I smoke every day. And I was like, no. And looking back on it, no, maybe not. Now, fast forward to today, I wouldn't say I necessarily smoke more cannabis, but it's the way that you look at cannabis. It's a different situation when you're buying it off the street. You just take what you can get, smoke it, whatever. Right now, you get to walk into a dispensary, talk about every single product they have, understand that those products, one, are clean, they've been tested, and you can trust those products. And then you get an idea of the different variations that you like. Whether you're a sativa person, an indica person, a hybrid person, now you can get even deeper. You can start targeting certain terpenes. For example, I have chronic back pain, and I've got a rod and 6 screws in my leg. I like heavy myrcene content cannabis plants, or cannabis strains, because they attack that pain. But a lot of people, that's probably the majority of what we've seen in Mississippi, is that heavy myrcene content, same with limonene, from the sativa side for pain management. But I think the opportunity is endless in that regard. But no, again, the way that I viewed it being an illegal state has definitely changed. It's definitely made me appreciate it more, and also learn more about it beyond what I was already interested in.
Yep. And that kind of, just lines up in terms of our product lines, which is, partial sitting in front of us. And that's been kind of the challenges as we enter a new state and a new market. You've got a new patient base for the most part. Yeah, you have some of the, connoisseurs or either the experienced users, but for the most part, the demographic, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, between, you're looking at the ages of 45 to 65 for
probably even higher than that.
Yeah, for the main patient base. And, as you look to carve out your specific offerings, it's not just flower. It's not just, pre-rolls, the standard of what you find on the street or what you find in most recreational markets. You've got gel capsules, you've got targeted edibles, you've got, a plethora of topicals out, offerings in the market, just so to get that patient base acquainted with using cannabis and applying it almost on a normal basis, where it's not like, hey, I'm going to go to the backyard and smoke away from my family for my nightcap. It's, hey, no, I'm going to work, gel capsules into my daily regimen as like, hey, I'm taking a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC in the morning. I'm taking, one that's, full spectrum THC at night to help me sleep. You've got different applications and different ways to reach out to everybody so that, everybody, I'm going to say everybody can enjoy, but everybody can find the value and find the pharmaceutical, assistance that they need rather than resorting to opioids or resorting to over-the-counter pills, which we've, I can say I've become dependent on, over-the-counter headache medicine, let alone what anybody else does to treat their own ailments. So it's definitely a step in the right direction for not just patients, but everybody alike who's looking to treat their pain and their ailments naturally.
So one of the things I want to kind of pick your brain on, or I want to kind of for us to chop it up if we got time, is, in a recreational medicinal market, mature, immature markets, flower is always going to be the top seller, it seems like.
Yep.
I have a take on that. I've got an opinion on that, but I'd like to hear what you think.
Well, and that's, I'll be, kind of, I guess, humble in the sense that I'm not the most and haven't been the most experienced user, coming into cannabis back, 7-8 years ago when I started. Just for background, I came from a military family where my dad would have put me through a wall had I, used cannabis in any sense of the word through middle school, high school, whatever it is. But coming from, experience in these markets that have, gone from no market to medical market to recreational, I've seen the whole progression from start to finish. And from my take and my perspective, it almost seems like, as you grow up, you see that alcohol is normally consumed as a drink. You don't really have any other forms that you see people consume alcohol. It's consumed with, drinking it, socially, drinking it, like, a can of beer or drinking it at a football game. I've always seen flower as like the main way that people consume, because it's also the main way that growers like to grow it or like to actually display their expertise and their craft. Every grower's got a different what's it called, technique, or different growing practices or different cure cycles. And it's really, from my point of view, it's really artistic, and you're kind of consuming someone's art and someone's craft. And that's why flower, I feel like, has always been kind of like the staple of how you want to at least first consume cannabis, is because you get to consume that communal, culture. I guess, that
you
culture
sit down, pass it. Passed around. I mean, that's the first time. Yeah, I mean, the first time I ever consumed cannabis, actually. So I was. This is going to sound terrible, but I was behind the school that I went to with my cousin, and I remember someone saw us, and they literally just yelled at us, "Puff, puff, pass." I mean, so that was my first encounter with it, and it was like a known language almost.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's also part of it. Is like there's nothing that it's kind of like a cold beer, there's not a lot that can challenge, or there's not a lot that can equivalent to having a cold beer on a summer day.
Yeah.
But that's the same with when you sit down and roll up a joint with your friends. Yeah. You get to sit there, you got to understand, hey, I got this. Hey, Joe, have you tried this strain out? You need to try this out. I mean, we do that all the time. Yeah. I call, me and my brother, we live together, and he's a cultivation tech here, as you know. But, when I pick up some fresh marijuana, the first person I call is Hayden.
Yep.
I open that jar, I look at him, oh my God, this looks amazing. I either text him and say, dude, I just picked up something that you're going to like, or I call him and say, dude, just guess what I just picked up. Can't wait for us to try it like that.
It's funny you say that, because I've never actually, even with anybody in the industry, I've never seen myself take a vape and go like, oh, check out this cool vape. The first thing is you open it, you look at the bud structure, usually hear, oh, it's so frosty or something, then you smell it. And there's a whole, like I said, it's a culture to it. There's a whole process in which enthusiasts like to.
Well, yeah, it's like it's almost like a ritual.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I know when I get home today, I'm either Hayden's going to be in the basement or I'll be in the basement. And I will be joined at some point by either I'll join him or he'll join me. But we will sit down, pick out a strain that we like, sit there, pass the jar, smell it, roll it up, smoke it. And then that's like our ritual. It's like an unspoken ritual, I guess you could say. But yeah, I mean, like every time you get a group of people who consume cannabis, whether they're medical patients, recreational patients, Mississippi, California, you open up that nug or you get that bag and you immediately put your nose into it, pull some nugs out, look at them, pass it around.
Well, it's interesting because, like you said, your brother, your first experience was smoking it behind school and, being introduced to flower immediately. It's like I came from the opposite direction. I came from never having used cannabis to wanting to use the most applicable form for me, which was I was so used to, hitting like a nicotine vape here and there from friends at parties or in college. And so the vape was the most applicable version for me to ease myself into it. And then being able to, looking from the outside in, it's like, hey, everyone's smoking flower. I'm like, why are they smoking flower? The first couple of times I tried it, and I was like, oh.
The acoustic version.
It's to me, I was like, it wasn't tasty. It wasn't the same profiles.
It's completely different.
But I think that's why I smoke flower so much now over smoking actual vapes is because as I learned more about cannabis and got my feet wet and started getting immersed in the industry, I started to dabble more in flower and really understand the huge difference that you get from actually consuming flower versus consuming anything else.
Yeah.
Like you get the true full plant use and the full plant offerings of what people say the magic has to offer you.
Yeah, the entourage effect.
The entourage effect. And so that was the biggest eye opener for me was I was like, maybe that's why people only consume, that's why flower is king in most markets or in every market is because you actually get the full benefit from, start to finish of what it means to experience a high.
I was the opposite. I was like flower first. And then when people started getting into vapes and stuff, I was like, nah, I'm good on that. I don't want to deal with that.
It's been 8 years and I still won't eat more than 5 milligrams on an edible. I'll say that though, for the record.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, it's been 10 years, 12, 11 years for me. And edibles still kick my butt. Yeah. So flowers are always a different one.
For everyone who will be viewing this, hopefully, it's going to be like 5 people to start. I'm going to send it to family or whatever.
What I would like to cover on the next podcast, if we get enough of people paying attention to us, is I would like to talk about the different backgrounds of individuals that use cannabis, different cultures that use cannabis, the history of cannabis, and how it relates in so many different people. I mean, you can take someone like Jimi Hendrix that smoked cannabis, and then you could take someone like my best buddy who's a hunting guide up in Alberta, Canada. Completely two opposite people, but I promise you, those two people could sit down and smoke cannabis together, and they'd get along over just that. Yep. All right, we'll take that, roll it up, and smoke it.